In 1907, John Trausch and his wife Susan, known as Tut, which means aunt in Luxembourg, started a small bakery in Dubuque, Iowa, with only one other employee. The name of the bakery was Vienna Bread. In 1914, their nephew Arthur Trausch came from Luxembourg for a visit. Arthur was a trained baker and later told the story of how he worked 80 hours a week, starting with lighting the wood oven in the early morning. He also said Aunt Tut charged him $2 per month to live above the bakery. He met his future wife Lillian, got married, and stayed in Dubuque. Arthur said that clear weather on Mondays was a key because housewives would do their laundry and hang it out to dry, and they wouldn't have time to bake. Thus, go to the bakery and buy a loaf of bread and maybe a cake. The bakery did well, and customers began to call the pretty ladies behind the counter Sweetheart when being served. They changed the name to Sweetheart Bakery. In 1929, the company was accepted into membership in Quality Bakers of America. The owner of the trademark name, Sunbeam Bread. QBA's engineering department designed a new bakery, but there was a need for a $4,000 payment to break ground, which Tut produced from underneath her mattress in the form of $220 Gold Eagle pieces. In 1931, the QBA designed 28,000 square foot building was constructed. In later years, buildings to the north and south were also purchased. The growth of Trausch Baking was largely due to their desire for new and cutting-edge equipment and technologies. As early as 1925, they had one of the first mechanically operated donut machines. And in 1928, Otto Rohwedder introduced the first bread slicing machine. But he couldn't convince bakers to make loaves of sliced bread until Trausch Baking Company ordered a slicer in May of 1929. More innovative purchases and investments would follow. After graduating from Loras Academy in Dubuque, Arthur Jr. enrolled at Wentworth Military Academy while waiting for his appointment to West Point. He wanted to be an engineer, which explains his interest in automation. He never made it to West Point, but during World War II, was sent to Europe attached to the 341st Engineers. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge, where he was wounded, receiving the Purple Heart and 3 Bronze Stars. Upon his return, Art Jr. enrolled at AIB in Chicago. He graduated with the December class of 1947. But in October, he went back to Dubuque to marry Doris on a Saturday, honeymooned at the Drake Hotel, and was back in class on Monday. Also returning from war was John Lagan, who married Art's older sister, Colette. John would become vice president and sales manager at Trausch. Uncle John unfortunately died way too young of cancer. One of the early Trausch investments was a new bread depanner. The traditional way was for men to grab the bread strap as it came out of the oven and bang it on a solid table to get the loaves to release. The new investment was a gravity depanner. The quality was much better, and the labor savings was obvious. Another investment was the new idea of a bulk flour system. Traditionally, flour would be in 50 to 100-pound sacks, and men would slice open the bags and dump them. The new flour system was installed. The new flour delivery truck eliminated the need for the sack flour to be unloaded by hand. Trausch also invested in the newest packaging, as paper bags gave way to wax paper, which gave way to cellophane, with heat-activated end labels. They bought some of the newest wrapping machines at the time. While Art Sr. took the bakery into QBA, Art Jr. became very active in the co-op. He was elected to QBA's Board of Governors in 1964, when there were over 140 members. The bakery began using the Sunbeam label, supported and promoted Sunbeam heavily, and worked with Sunbeam's national spokesman, Gene Autry. And if you were old enough, you got to go along for the ride. Little Miss Sunbeam came to Dubuque to promote the Sunbeam label and be on the bakery's float. Later, in an effort to reduce cost and have Little Miss Sunbeam more readily available for parades and local events, Doris and Art's third daughter, Trish, who was blonde, became Little Miss Sunbeam. The Sunbeam family of independent bakers were a tight group. Here's a picture of H.L. Pop, Art Sr., and Bernie Evers Sr. Besides Sunbeam, the bakery began making and promoting another franchise bread called Hillbilly Bread. Once again, Trausch went all in and promoted Hillbilly Bread to the max. Here's a picture of 8-foot 4-inch Mr. Hillbilly with Art Sr., Jr., and young Tom Trausch, who joined the bakery in 1958 after his service with the U.S. Air Force. Trausch Baking was cutting edge and tried to bring new bread products to the market. Not all of them succeeded, and maybe this whole grain product was just too early and before its time. They promoted all bread and baked products. Here is Art Jr. with other members of the Iowa Bakers Association in Governor Robert Ray's office with a rather large loaf of bread. Business was continuing to expand until Mother Nature stepped in. First, in 1952, when the Mississippi River flooded, but the bakery continued to operate. This was just a dress rehearsal for the devastating flood of 1965, when the river crested at 10 feet above flood stage. The bakery was sandbagged, and many pumps were deployed to keep the bakery as dry as possible. The big concern was the water pressure on the building's walls, so they were braced. The equipment and stock was elevated, and the ovens were kept dry. Art Jr. was at the bakery around the clock for weeks. Though the bakery was shut down for several weeks, it did survive, and after a Herculean effort by the employees, it was a wonderful day when the county food inspector gave the green light to resume operations. In 1976, encircled by corporate competition from ITT Wonder Bread, Campbell Taggart, and Heilemann Baking, and needing new million-dollar equipment, Arthur Trausch Jr. made the difficult decision to sell the family bakery to G. Heilemann Brewing Company. He would become the president of the bakery division and elected to the board of directors of the brewery, a public company that was one of the fastest-growing companies in the U.S. Art reported to the CEO of Heilemann, Mr. Russell Cleary, whom he admired and thought was the best corporate leader he ever met. The bakery division employees would echo that same sentiment about Art. He left Trausch and QBA, but he resigned from their board only to be elected to the board of directors of the W.E. Long Company. On December 31, 1984, Arthur Trausch Jr. retired as president of Heilemann Baking Company. It was the end of the Trausch family direct involvement in the production of the Staff of Life. It is fitting that we end this tribute to Arthur Trausch Sr., Arthur Trausch Jr., Tom Trausch, John Lagan, and all of the multi-generational employees of Trausch Baking Company with the billboard that was displayed every year at Christmas time at Trausch Baking Company.